Cory bought a huge piece of land 35 years ago. It was a rocky piece of landscape that nobody wanted. He had built a house on it and lived there with his family. But the land was so big, Cory never explored every part of it. For a year now, he's been exploring his own land and he has found multiple bizarre things. But this day, Cory found something that shocked him to his core. It looked like military equipment. What was this doing here, and for how long was it laying here already? Then he thought of his old friend who was a general now. Cory called his old friend and explained what he found. The general's reaction was shocking. "Cory, move away as quietly as possible. You were never supposed to find this." When the US military heard about his find, they wasted no time in taking action. With the weapon still intact, they finally had the proof they needed. But who targeted Farmer Cory with the military weapon? How had it ended up on his land, and what was the US military going to do? Before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. When Farmer Cory was plowing his fields, he noticed something in the distance he had never seen before. He saw a big piece of green metal sticking out from the ground. Cory headed over to see what it was. But as he got closer, he realized it wasn't just a loose piece of metal lying around. It was a big metal capsule filled with little, dark green balls. Cory was unsure about what the balls could be, but when he crouched down to pick one up, he quickly realized it was something very dangerous. The capsule was filled with hand grenades. There were probably 50 of them, all piled up and ready to explode. Cory pulled his hand back and took a few steps backward. Unsure what to do next, he carefully walked back to the capsule and looked if the pins were still intact. To his relief, he saw that the pins were still in place, so he knew that the grenades were safe for the time being. He wondered why this capsule suddenly lay in his field. He had never seen it before, so maybe someone had dumped it there recently. Or could it have been there for a long time? Cory could not be sure, but then he noticed something. In the corner of the capsule was something engraved. It was very hard to read as the rust had grown over it, but Cory could make out 2 letters and a few numbers. He ran inside to get a notepad and wrote everything down. Cory looked at the numbers but had no idea what they could be. He put his tractor back in the bar, tied a string around the capsule so he would always be able to see where it was, and went inside his farm. He thought about calling the police, but Cory had always loved going on adventures or solving difficult riddles. And he also didn't want the bomb squad involved. They would take over his farm and probably destroy his crops with their cars while they removed the capsule. No, Cory definitely didn't want that. So there was only one thing he could do: solve this mystery on his own, no matter how dangerous it could get. Suddenly it dawned on Cory, this might be a dangerous mission. The grenades might still be active, so he couldn't take one with him. And maybe the owner doesn't want to be found? Cory sighed. Should he do this? But then he got himself together and sat up straight in his chair. He went back outside to the capsule and took a few photos of it. He made sure to really capture every detail so he could zoom in if he needed. When he felt he had enough, he went back inside and typed the initials into his computer. He hoped to find at least a name, but sadly nothing came up. Cory couldn't shake the excited feeling he got from this sudden mystery. He loved his life as a farmer, but it wasn't as thrilling as he'd like. This mystery gave him a purpose. He sat on his kitchen table still looking at the numbers. He tried calling them to see if it was a phone number, but that was also a fail. There were a few numbers missing too. He only wrote down the numbers he saw clearly at that moment. So he opened one of the photos and zoomed in. Now he was able to make out a few more numbers and even the more letters, an N in the middle and a W at the end. Suddenly, Cory realized what the letters meant. N stood for north and W stood for west. They were coordinates. Cory was very excited about his first discovery. After that, he decoded the other letters and soon he had all the coordinates he needed. He typed them into Google, but was surprised with what he saw. The coordinates led to a thick forest somewhere in Utah. It would be a long drive if he wanted to go over there, but he knew there was no other way. This was the only lead he had, at this moment, so he had to follow it. He knew it would be a long drive, so he decided to take his old pickup truck. He filled the gas tank and packed a cooler with food and drinks. He also brought a map and compass just in case his GPS failed. The drive was long and monotonous, but Cory was determined to reach his destination. He passed through small towns and rural areas, and the scenery changed from lush green fields to dense forests. The road was winding and bumpy, and he had to navigate through potholes and mud. But finally, after several hours of driving, he reached the coordinates. He found himself in the middle of the forest, and there was no sign of a road or a path. So he parked his truck and put on his hiking boots. He followed the compass, and the coordinates seemed to lead him deeper into the forest. He had to climb over fallen trees and navigate through thick underbrush. He also had to be careful of the animals that roamed the forest. He encountered a bear, but he managed to scare it away. As Cory walked through the forest, he noticed signs of human activity: rusty cans, broken bottles, and empty bullet casings. He sensed he was close to something. After hours of hiking, he stumbled upon an old, abandoned bunker. The door opened easily, revealing a humid, musty interior. Dust coated everything, but Cory felt an odd sense of belonging. With his flashlight, he explored the space, discovering remnants of a past era: helmets, uniforms, empty food cans, and medical supplies. Among the relics, he found a radio emitting static and, more importantly, a pile of photographs and letters. As he flipped through the letters, a piece of paper slipped out. Curious, he picked it up and was stunned. It was a map. The markings were unclear, but the bunker and a nearby river were visible. Something was marked with a large red X. Intrigued, Cory decided he couldn't stop now. He called his wife, letting her know he'd be late, then sat outside the bunker studying the map. No matter how he examined it, the meaning of the red X remained unclear. The only way to find out was to follow the map. Cory set off towards the river, navigating through thick forest and fallen trees. The usual sounds of nature were interrupted by rushing water. He had reached the river. To be safe, he marked the location on his own map. He soon noticed remnants of an old bridge on either side of the river. It had once been there, but was now gone. The map must have been drawn much earlier than he had thought. Frustrated, Cory tried to devise a plan. He couldn't give up now. Swimming wasn't an option. He had never been a strong swimmer. Instead, he searched for another solution. Nearby, he found large tree branches. With determination, he built a makeshift bridge, ensuring it was sturdy enough to support his weight and withstand the current. Once satisfied, Cory secured his belongings and cautiously stepped onto the bridge, hands free to maintain his balance. He was ready to see where this adventure would lead him next. At first, Cory hesitated. The river was flowing rapidly, and he imagined himself falling in. But after a few steps, his confidence grew. He was almost across when disaster struck. The last branch was swept away by the current. He lost his balance but managed to leap forward, landing on the riverbank. His shoes and trousers were soaked, but he had made it. Catching his breath, a big smile spread across his face. The thrill of the adventure was exhilarating. He checked the map again and continued walking, but the path faded as the forest thickened. He pushed through the dense undergrowth until he stumbled into an open clearing. It was an unexpected but breathtaking sight. Checking the map, he realized he was close to the red X. He searched the area but found nothing. Frustrated, he studied the map again and noticed something he had missed before: a small triangle next to the X. It had to mean something. Determined, Cory scanned his surroundings, looking for a triangular sign or hidden object. He found nothing. Triangles were rare in nature, but then he spotted a large rock standing out among the greenery. Examining it closely, he noticed two more rocks nearby. Stepping back, he realized they formed a perfect triangle, just like on the map. The X had to be in the center. Excited, he started digging with his bare hands. He hadn't expected to need a shovel. Tearing away grass and soil, he soon felt something solid. Brushing off the dirt, he uncovered a box. The map was real. Heart pounding, Cory lifted the box from the ground. He placed it before him, held his breath, and slowly opened the lid. Inside were personal belongings of a soldier, photos, letters, and a journal. He wanted to read everything right away, but he decided to take it home and examine it properly. Packing up his things, he retraced his steps. Rebuilding his makeshift bridge, he crossed the river and reached his truck as dusk settled in. Exhausted but exhilarated, he drove home. Despite his fatigue, curiosity got the best of him. That night, he pored over the journal and letters, absorbing the soldier's experiences. By the time he finished, he felt like he had known the man personally. Then, something clicked. The bunker coordinates had been written on a capsule he had found on his property, marked with the initials JG. The box also belonged to someone named JG. Could it be the same person? Determined to find answers, Cory contacted the local authorities. To his amazement, they identified JG as a missing soldier from the war. His family had spent decades without closure, and they were overjoyed to receive his belongings. Grateful for Cory's discovery, they formed a lasting friendship. That same day, the police came to remove the mysterious capsule from Cory's garden. As he reflected on everything, Cory marveled at how an ordinary day of exploration had led to an incredible journey through history.